So I was doing some thoughts and playthroughs and looking ats of Dragon Age, which is going to be the next game I look at, Dragon Age Origins, the original. And something unusual occurred to me. I I sort of feel like Mass Effect 3 is stalking me, because I feel like no matter what I do, I just can't seem to get away from the game, if you know what I mean. And so, there I am, thinking about Dragon Age, doing what I can about that game, and I started thinking of ideas for how I would improve Mass Effect 3 as the overall. You know, because all I really talked about was the ending. But, as I've said before, there are actual problems with the game as a whole. They're not as big, and they're not as vibrant, and, you know, there are truly good gems in that game, as I've said before. But I still think it could have been done better. I still think they failed to deliver on what was promised, on what they said they were going to do, right? And that's just my opinion. But I just wanted to share a couple quick things that I'd come up with. Let's see, I've got a couple of notes here. One of the things that really got to me, and this is what started this thought process, was I was thinking about the intro, and I was talking about it with a friend of mine who finally picked it up, and finally started playing it. I've been keeping my mouth shut around him for like a month now, or however long it's been. He finally picked it up, and he started complaining about the intro. And I said, well, yeah, and I really hated this part about the intro, and here's why. The thing that bothered me, and I can explain this really quickly, Shepard, when Commander Anderson... Okay, this is actually a two-parter. When you first go into the meeting with all the Admiralty, and they say, "What do we do, Shepard?" and Shepard says, "We fight or we die." Something about that didn't quite sit right with me. It took me... at the time, it just kind of was a little... and it kind of passed. I had to think about it to really figure out what bothered me about that. Shepard, for 2 full games, has been trying, no matter if you're Renegade or Paragon, this is important, has been trying for 2 full games to unite people, get people to get together and fight against a common foe, right? For 2 full games. And so rather than saying, we go get help now, while we still have a chance to, or, you know, we hold the line so that the cavalry can come and save you, some form of we go do what we actually end up doing in Mass Effect 3, we say, we fight or we die. Something about that just bugged me, and it's a little thing, I'll admit that. Like I said, cracks. There were cracks in Mass Effect 3. It was still a good game, but it was just little cracks that just kind of, and then you kind of move on. But the big crack in the intro, and the one that really bothered me, was when you get to the ship. Now, my Shepard, admittedly, has a very realistic, I guess is the word I want to use, viewpoint. She is very much, actually, I guess that's not the viewpoint. When my Shepard sees that the Reapers have reached Earth, her first reaction would be to get on the Normandy, get everyone she could on there as fast as possible, and go. Because humankind cannot stop the Reapers on their own, and they needed to go get people together now. What happens is, no matter what your Shepard is, Paragon, Renegade, anything, you get on the ship, and then you start arguing with Anderson that you're going to stay and fight, even though you... your Shepard has to know that that's an incredibly stupid, asinine idea. I could see that from one of the newcomers, like James Vega, who I can't stand, but let's just leave that aside for the moment. I could see that from one of the newcomers. I could see that from someone who doesn't understand the stakes. Nobody in the galaxy understands the stakes better than Shepard. He or she should have been like, alright, I need to go, and I need to go now, and we can't afford delays. Literally every second people are dying, let's go. And not getting to the point where Anderson had to order Shepard to leave without him, and order... not even leave without him, that's not the important part. Order Shepard to leave at all, rather than stay and keep on the good point. And Anderson is the one who has to tell Shepard, that this is serious, you need to go to this, and you need to go unite all the people, and blah, 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 blah. And there is no dialogue option anywhere to basically say, yes, that's exactly what I'm going to do. You know, there's no dialogue option to be like, hell yeah. It's just like, okay, I'm going to argue with you because screw you, and that really bothered me. And my friend and I were talking about this, and we started talking about slightly different intros, and why it is we wished... And Mass Effect 3 had a ability to be more divergent because it was the end of a series, or at least it was purported to be an end of a series, right? And that meant you could even do different starters to the game. Now, bear with me on this, because I just want to toss this out and outline as best as I can. Let's say you were a primarily Paragon individual, right? And so you import your save game, and you're primarily Paragon, and you are still there, still grounded, because obviously you went home and made the call after destroying the, I can't think of the name of the system, but destroying the relay in Arrival. But rather than sitting there just kind of staring out the window, you know, enjoying the toffees, you are actively coordinating with Liara, actively coordinating with the Shadow Broker, you know, assuming you did the Shadow Broker, of course, actively making contact with Tali, seeing what's going on with her ship fleet, actively getting information out there, actively, you know, I want you to picture this, you can, visually, rather than this quiet scene where it starts with Shepard watching the kid in the garden. It's this scene where Shepard is basically in the midst of this maelstrom of information. There's displays everywhere. Every single one of them is connected to something. And over here is Liara, and over here is Tali, and over here is Garrus, and Shepard. Forgive me if I keep saying she. My Shepard was a female, so. Shepard is just running around. This has to be dealt with. This, okay, we need to coordinate this. We need these supplies over here just in case this becomes a front line. And, you know, just trying to do something to assist in a war that she knows is coming, that Shepard knows is coming. And then, you know, Anderson comes in and says, hey, we need you at the War Council, and blah, 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 blah. And so you go to the War Council and you say, we go and we get those allies and we get everyone united and we fight this as a unified front like we always should have, like I've been telling you people about for 2 years now. Now, if you'll excuse me, I need to get to my ship. And leaves. And then you could still have the Reaper attack right then and there. You still have to fight for the ship. It would still work. But, you know, what if you were a Renegade? What if you were primarily Renegade? Well, okay, let's go ahead and say you still came back to come to call, because I think even a Renegade Shepard would admit, would at the very least show up for the hearing for wiping out a solar system. I don't know about you, but I personally do think Renegade Shepard would still do that. So they're still on the planet, they're still grounded, but rather than being in the maelstrom of information and trying to use what resources everyone else has and the respect that Shepard still has in order to get something done, Shepard is actually down in the training fields, right? With all the troops. Hang on just a second. Work thing here. There we go. Okay. Sorry, had to get that patch running. Is down in the fields, down in the training grounds, actually training troops. Okay, this is how it's going to be like fighting a Geth. This is going to be what it's like fighting a Husk. Actually giving them, you know, real live experience information, and has been hired on as a consultant, even though Shepard at that point is not officially part of the military because of the whole trial thing. Hackett personally came down and hired Shepard, or Anderson. I think it would be Hackett personally for a Renegade. Hackett comes down and hires Shepard and as this consultant. And Shepard then gives all of that experience, all of that knowledge, for that front-hand knowledge from being the person who knows about Reapers and all their minions and how to fight them, to all the people in the field, trying to get these people actively out there, physically trying to get these people ready for the war that Shepard knows is coming. And in that case, you know, one of the things I was thinking you could do is have James Vega be one of those recruits for that initiate, and I would completely change James Vega's personality, by the way. I couldn't stand him. I think I've said that before, more than just this video. I really could not stand James Vega. But making James one of those recruits, one of those elite Marines, like a N4, for example, if you know what that means, and having him be one of those people who really believed Shepard and really wanted to be and really fought to be in that part of the line. So that's, you know, he's one of your top people in this little team that you're making as Renegade Shepard. And Vega comes down and says, you know, they need you. And then you go up and it's like, and then, you know, that Shepard would have a completely different tone with that meeting with the Admiralty. I've been telling you about this for 2 years. I have been telling you that we need to get out there and start fighting proactively and actually, you know, blah, 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 blah. Really just pushing. Oh, you people are idiots. I'm leaving now, and I'm going to get everyone, and then we're going to come back here and show you how it's done properly. Hold the line while I'm gone. See ya. Don't hold my calls. And, you know, just something like that. Renegade Shepard. And so, right off the bat, that's a diversion. And that's mostly a small diversion, but that's because this is only within the first 10 minutes of the game. Think about the kind of long-term effects that would have. For example, let's go ahead and cover one other choice thing from the collector base. Whether or not you saved it or got rid of it really didn't make a particularly large amount of difference, did it? Let's be honest, in Mass Effect 3. I'm actually not sure it made any difference, to be honest with you. I don't recall it ever coming up. But let's say you saved the collector base, right? Let's say that as a Renegade, you know, through this Renegade thing you leave, and the first thing you do is go to the collector base, because you've basically set that up quietly, clandestinely with your friends, and probably with Liara as the Shadow Broker, as your base now. That is now Shepard's base, and that becomes the home base of the person who saved the collector base rather than the Citadel. You can still go to the Citadel and get quests from the Citadel, but when you go back to your home base and when you talk to the people, you know, okay, we need a decision about this, Shepard, you go to the collector base. if you follow me, and use that, and blah 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 blah. Let's say as a Paragon, you are a primary Paragon, but you saved the collector base. In that case, your very first mission is going to the collector base, which you haven't been using periodically, but you are aware of the fact that Cerberus has been using, for example. So your very first mission, rather than Mars and the Deus Ex Machina crap, which I'm not going to get into, is to go back to the collector base and take it from Cerberus and see what you can do with it, blah, 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 blah. And that would be a fantastic time to put Edie in her body, for example, if you wanted to keep going with that. And I could just picture it. I can picture how wildly the story would have started diverging just from that. This is like an hour and a half into the game at this point, and already I could see it just splintering out in a dozen different directions. What if you destroy the collector base, and you're heavily Renegade, right? Well, why not have one of your either Cerberus or have Arya come up to you and say, you want to help me retake Omega? Because she lost Omega during the comic series, and you help her retake Omega, and she basically sets up Omega as your base of operations from that point on, instead of the Citadel. And so the Renegade destroyed the collector base person is now set up on Omega for the duration, and helping getting all of those troops, and doing missions for the Black Suns and for the the Blue Suns. Black Sun is Star Wars. You can be doing missions for all those three mercenary groups in order to get them ready and get them trained and get them on your side, things like that. And of course, the Paragon Shepherd, who destroyed the collector base, could go to the Citadel and have the the way I envision is have the Citadel Council basically bowing and scraping, "Oh my God, we're so sorry, you were right. Here, have access to like the top shelf. This is our high command center. This is where we get contact, across the galaxy using all the latest technology and those I can't think of the name of them, but the super communication relays that like almost nobody has access to use, and they've mentioned it very rarely in the games, but they are there. You have access to that. You have access to anything. You have the full resources at your disposal, and that becomes your new base. So we've got 4 bases we've set up here. So 4 methods of setting up a home base other than the ship for the duration of in the course of this. And of course, just to add one little extra thing, what if you decided to stay a shepherd? What if you decided to stay a shepherd? What if you decided to stay a Specter? You get back, and you remember that little Specter training facility? What if, okay, you stayed a Specter, so you go down there, and you're like a Specter high rank or whatever. You're fully classified, so you have full access to that, full access to all the gear and maybe some credits, and the availability of making choices. They let you make decisions in the Spectre thing in actual Mass Effect 3. I would expand on that massively, especially as a Tier 2 Spectre, and this is important, because even someone who didn't choose to be, who was Paragon, could go to there and be offered, or not just who is Paragon, but someone who goes to the Citadel and wasn't a Spectre before, let it go ahead and die in 2, but wanted to be regained, it can come back as a Spectre 1, which doesn't have as much access, but still has full access to a lot of those decisions and a lot of the arsenal and a lot of resources and extra quests that have to do with that, all that kind of thing. There are so many ways you could diverge that. And I would also make it possible for you to say screw you to the Spectre status. If you had said screw you to it before, and possibly if you said screw to it at second, it would have to be handled differently, but, I don't want your Spectre status. I have a galaxy to save. I don't really have time for paperwork, so if you'll excuse me, and, so, leave and go do your own thing. And as a result, I can't think of the name of this one. The special tactics group that the Solarians had. If you completely tell Spectre off and just want to have nothing to do with that, the Solarians contact you and say, hey, we have an opening here. Morden vouched for you, assuming Morden's alive. If Morden is not alive, maybe this is an option, so, another branch there. But if Morden's alive, and you say no to the Spectre status, and you weren't a Spectre N2, then you get the option to join the Solarian team, whose name I can't think of right now. And I could go on and on and on. There were so many options to branch out and really have your choices not just matter in the sense of what number was on your screen when you looked at the war assets screen, but rather actually have completely divergent playthroughs. And that changed everything. And so I just really wanted to share some of these thoughts, and feel free to comment on them, tell me what you think of them, tell me I'm horrible and an idiot and have no idea what I'm talking about. I really don't mind, as long as you do it nicely. But I just wanted to share. This is just, again, I have not gone more than 2 hours into the game at this point, tops. Well, maybe a little bit more with some of the mission times, but you know, and I wanted to talk about one other thing really quick. You'll notice all of my projected things completely eject the Mars mission, and I think the Mars mission was the very first time I saw a crack that actually bothered me in Mass Effect 3. That whole sequence bothered me, especially the Deus Ex Machina out of absolutely nowhere. That is the Crucible. As I've said before, I think I would keep the Crucible. I would not have it just by, oh, by the way, over here on Mars we've got plans for a Doomsday weapon that can wipe out all the Reapers. I would have introduced it a little better than that. In fact, actually, the way I would have done it is I would have said that the Prothean tech that the Asari have been keeping hidden, when you finally go to, I can't think of the name of the Asari homeworld, when you finally go to there, that's when you find out about the Crucible. I would have also pushed that mission a lot earlier on. And that's when you find out about that. Or maybe you find it out from the Asari counselor herself, if you're a high paragon, and she's like, okay, look, we have this idea, but we're going to need the combined resources, and you're the one at the head of the combined alliance here, so do you think you can make this happen? And Shepard could say, you bet! And, you know, and then goes to Hackett, and then you can say to Hackett, you know, this is a long shot, and Hackett will probably say, I agree, this is a long shot, and I doubt it'll work, but it's worth it. And, you know, and as I mentioned in one of my other videos, one of the things you could do then is later on have a choice to, say, try and add some of your own things. Like if you save the Cerberus scientists involved in Jacob's mission, which I would, of course, expand. I'd expand everything. Let's just be honest with ourselves. The only mission I probably wouldn't touch at all would be Tachanka, but moving on. And so you get the access to these scientists, and maybe you get access to some of the Quarians, or maybe you get access to some Arachni. Some combination. There wouldn't be a set way, but there would be several ways at which you could get a combination such that your engineers come to you and say, we have an idea. We think we can turn the Crucible into something that is essentially a massive Thanax cannon. And that would have a huge impact on the finale and the ending of the game. And so that would be another option. And of course, if you don't do that, you know, it would still be possible to win in the ending. That would probably involve Shepard sacrificing themselves, for example, and probably quite a few other people in the process, but there could still be a win. Paths, choices, your choices should matter. I cannot possibly say that enough. When you have a game series that has built itself upon making your choices feel like they matter, even in Mass Effect 2, every single one of those files that was carried for, every single one of those triggers that was carried forward to Mass Effect 1, at the very least carried flavor into 2. And you had NPCs around, and you had missions around that carried forward the tone of what you did in 1. And that should have been done a dozen times more in 3. And it wasn't, and it's really sad. So anyways, I just wanted to share some more ideas. Feel free to toss back. I need to go and get some more work done. So I'll talk to you guys later.